Good morning. This is Unit 6 of our first unit for the IQI Academy for Leadership Fundamentals. I have a couple requests of you. First of all, if you can, please email me a copy of your organization chart for your facility. If you get hold of one today, I'd like to use at least one of those that you send me. I put together some version of a comparison between an organization view that we have from Dr. Deming and a real live organization chart. So I'd like to be able to use something from one of our facilities. And then the other request, here's an update. So far, we've done quite a bit as far as getting ready for running plan, do, study, act cycles. In fact, you've begun doing many elements of them already. The first thing we've done is, of course, read and discuss the new economics, which helps us understand some of the theory behind why we do plan, do, study, act cycles. We've generated and discussed 5 project ideas. We've evaluated and scored those project ideas with a criteria that was established ahead of time. That criteria is also an opportunity for you to learn how to set up and evaluate future projects, not necessarily using that exact same criteria, but that structure of deciding criteria ahead of time, providing, applying point values to different levels of those criteria, and then looking at a comparison of several different options using predetermined criteria. And then we've answered the 3 basic questions. What am I trying to accomplish? How will I know that a change is an improvement? And what moves can I test that will produce improvement? We've developed a simple deployment flow chart to help us see perhaps opportunities for an answer to question number 3, what moves can I make? We've identified a move, we've created a prediction about that move, and then we've made a move to improve, and then documented our answers to what got moved, how did it go, and what did I learn? Now, I know we're all at various stages of progress in some of these items. We'll be having an opportunity to catch up this week, and we certainly want to make sure that we begin to work towards having all these items completed before Friday. Today, we have a review of here's what we've been doing. We've done a lot. We've done our move to improves, we've done teach to learns, and we've begun working on the 14-point scoring grids. In fact, I've received some from some of you already. Should be interesting conversations as you talk about any one of those items that is not scored exactly the same. Why do I see it differently? One of the things that's important to remember when people score things on a scale like we have, sometimes even the same score is written down for vastly different reasons. I've done survey work where I've collected, for instance, meeting feedback, and I've had people score an item one way, but in their descriptions about why they scored it that way, they had completely opposite viewpoints of why they were scoring. So even identical scores may not mean we think about or observe things the same way. Today we're going to talk about the plan, do, study, act cycle. We're going to dive more into depth. And then the assignment for today is to develop our plan for the next move to improve. Not perform everything, but just develop the plan. And then if you haven't done so already, please schedule an office hours meeting with Eric, either today or Tuesday. Denise, I just received your request, and I send off a meeting notice for you and Joe for tomorrow at 11, if that still works. I want to see something here. There we go. Now on my sharing screen, do you see anything other than the slide? You don't see the Zoom information that's, okay, good, all right. That allows me to see you while I'm still talking to the screen. Now I have, oh, maybe I need to, I'm going to move this. When Dr. Deming spoke about the Pdsa cycle, he wrote this. He described it as a flow diagram for learning and improvement of a product or of a process. Most of us in our projects are working on processes. And I have something that's kind of almost heresy, suggesting that Deming should have said something different. I'm suggesting that a flow diagram for learning then improvement of a product or process is what the plan, do, study, act cycle is. So any thoughts on this? Why might I want to say learning then improvement? What do we know about improvement so far that might contribute to this? Denise, it looks like you're going to say something.
I'm warning you that the cat might step on the computer, but anyway, she wants to learn apparently.
Yeah, good for her. Yeah.
No, but I was going to say that lavender. I was going to say that learn then improve. I mean, I feel like this academy in particular is trying to teach us to evaluate, what our approach is and why our approach is what it is. So therefore, there's some learning before we try to make the improvement, hopefully then gaining more success.
Exactly. We should be learning before we try to do improvement. Otherwise, we're going to be applying the same thinking and approaches to whatever proposals we put into our improvement effort, probably with the same similar results. We also talked about the relationship between, if I already know what I need to know to make improvement, we should be asking a question, well, why am I not doing it today? So if we have an issue that is confronting us, applying the same thinking, same knowledge will produce somewhat of the same result. So it's very important that we understand that what we're trying to do with Plan, Do, Study, Act is design a cycle that allows us to learn. And that's one of the key aspects to what we're doing with this. So there's a handout that we have in that I'd like you to use. I don't know if you've looked at the learning management system today and looked at our handout or our exercise. If we have an in-class exercise, if you go to section 4, you can download, it says 106 exercise, Pdsa questions, and there's 4 pages that look like this. They're PDF forms that you should be able to fill out. If you can't access them right now, go ahead and just document your answers and then transfer them over, and you could, from a piece of paper that you have in front of you, or even a Word document that you could pull up on your screen. So one of the things we might want to consider is, as we write our answers to the questions that we'll be examining, we want to ask ourselves, well, what must happen in each of these stages? But overall, before we ask about what must happen in each stage of the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, and what questions we should answer, overall, what we've kind of touched on it, what must happen overall in the Pdsa cycle? Heidi, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Sorry for the confusion I generated for you.
What must happen is some sort of change.
Yeah, we must make a change. And then what also must happen? Anybody, Danny or Rayanne?
You learn from it.
We want to learn from it. That's exactly it. So what, remember, I think Megan, I think you filled out the what did I learn form. That was probably a challenging form to respond to.
It was, yes.
Yeah. But there's different options, right? There either I was right about, so what was the structure that allowed you to learn? What do we do with our Pdsa cycle? What's the one of the first things we do?
You predict.
We make a prediction. So we have this move we're going to make, and we make a prediction about what's going to happen. And what were the three options that we have? Our prediction is 100% accurate. Do we learn from that? Anybody can answer that question. Do we learn from making a 100% correct prediction?
I mean, I think there's always learning to be had. I mean, 100% is, I've never known a prediction to be 100% correct. I think there's always variables, but.
Exactly. So there's almost always some opportunity to learn. The challenge we have is if we're running the Pdsa cycle with the intent to learn and not to justify or to demonstrate that we're correct, but to actually learn, we will observe some things that say, you know what, I didn't predict that. Megan, you had some things you didn't predict in your test that you ran last week. What were a couple things you noticed that showed up in your test that you did not predict?
The two of the girls had said that it was a good thing that we were doing a morning huddle. It kind of set the morning vibe, I guess, throughout the day. There was a lot of positive feedback, which I really didn't expect that. I more or less just tried to just explain like what might go on throughout the day if there was room changes or whatnot. And in return, I got complaints from other departments, so that I had to address. But was not the reason why I was doing my morning huddle. But what do you do?
Interesting. Now, I didn't see complaints show up in what you recorded as things that happened. That's an interesting observation too, is that sometimes the things that we observe are not necessarily positive. And so we want to record those as well, because then we can have an opportunity to learn from that in the future when we remember that. So, and then when we predict something that doesn't come true, isn't observed later, that means we have an opportunity to learn about, well, why did I predict that thing and it didn't happen? Or like you had the instance of, I predicted something and something else showed up as well, and you have an opportunity to learn from that. So it's very important to pay attention and record. These are things that occurred, and then you compare them to, oh, I didn't really predict this, or I did predict this. And then you have much more, a richer opportunity for learning. So let's go through some of this on our forms. We want to ask ourselves, first of all, what must happen during plan? And then what questions should we be answering? And I think I'm going to try to, here we go. I can record this here. So during plan, what must happen?
Like you're drawing your vision about what you would like.
And would like in what sense?
what you'd like to see changed or what you'd like to make happen.
Is there anything else that, let's look at this. What must happen during plan?
Kind of create a roadmap.
Create a roadmap. In what sense?
Well, you have this predetermined kind of idea that you would like to see. How are you going to get to that? What do you have to put in place? You know, what questions do you think you have to ask in order to get the responses that you think you're going to get?
Okay.
We use Plan Do Study Act for our QA process or QI process, and I guess the just functional way we look at plan is identifying the problem and who's going to be part of the solution or part of the data collection. You know, gathering your team to try to figure out. And maybe that's there's some do in that, I guess, as well, but you have to know who you're starting with and who your target audience is and who who your team's going to be.
And then you said something about data collection as well, right?
Yeah, because we use Plan Do Study Act always as, okay, so what's it, especially like measurable tips for copy as much as possible. Don't get me wrong, Plan Do Study Act happens all the time, you know, in decision making even, but when we're looking at performance improvement projects, we always try to look at so here, I'll give you a silly example. We constantly have lost clothing articles for residents. We track how many articles of lost clothing we've had over the last 6 months. We've seen that it's increased. So that's our data point for the start. Obviously, once we get to the Do Study Act part, you're looking at what your data points are to see if your solutions are, you know, actually making an impact. But not everything has easy data points. That's just one that does.
That's a good point. Some things are easy to measure, others are not. Dr. Deming is well known for saying some of the most important figures are unknown and unknowable. And yet he's a statistician, so collecting data is a critical thing. So what are we measuring? What are our data points? I like that one about lost clothing articles. That's actually something you can track. What else?
I think it's also important to know if the team that you're building, if they think it's a problem and if they are willing to support this change.
Okay. That may or may not be part of the test, right? So, I mean, there's agreement with, I want to be on the team, I want to do this. And then there's also, do I support this change? Mm-hmm. We had, at a bank I was working at, we were changing the pricing of certain types of small business loans. And one of the people that was essentially a salesperson for the bank, he disagreed vehemently with the proposed pricing scheme. So we put him in charge of running the test. We said, all right, you can run the test to see whether or not this pricing scheme works or doesn't work with your bank's customers. When that test was over, he became the strongest proponent for the new pricing scheme because he had done the test, seen with his own eyes that it was valuable and that it worked. So it may not be that we don't go ahead with something. You may ask some of your naysayers to actually be involved and participate in the test, because then we can see with the test, with the data, they can see, oh, this really worked, rather than have somebody tell them it was a good thing. But it is a critical question to ask. Do people support the change? What other questions have to be created or developed during during the plan portion of our PDSA cycle. Remember, we're designing the test. We're designing the things that we're going to do with the test. So who's on the team? Draw vision. What else do we need to have? What questions do you need to answer so you're prepared to actually run a short little test on a move we think will produce improvement? What else do we have to ask ourselves?
I guess at this point, what is the plan itself? So do you have a corrective action? Do you have something you want to implement? Where is your, oh,
Is that right? So what's the implementation plan, or what's the move we were making? Okay. Now there's something else you need to plan out ahead of time. What else do you need to do ahead of time?
Say why we're doing it?
Yeah, I'm thinking more of the practical applications of, now that we're in the test, what else do you want to plan before you actually start to do the test?
what's the outcome you're hoping for? I don't know.
Yeah, so think of it. So Megan makes her plan to have a morning stand-up meeting. Now, what's important to tell whether or not, when she studies the results of that, what does she have to have in hand in order to study the results? There's a version of this. What are we measuring? What are our data points? But rather than make you guess, what data collection or observation tools we use? And then there's something related to that. So we collect our data. What also do we have to plan beforehand?
Prediction?
Well, we have, let's see. Oh yeah, make a prediction, right? Yeah. So what is our prediction? So now we have this plan, we have our prediction, we have our data collection that we know what data we're going to collect, we have our tools. What else do we need to plan in order for this to be a learning cycle?
The action that we'll be doing to move it?
Yeah, that's the implementation plan. So this is further down now. We need to plan ahead of time. I'm going to answer this. How will we study our results? And there might be one further question related to how will we study. Who will participate in studying our results? Okay. There's a form that we have in the LMS that's part of your assignment for today. Here we go. I'll show it. No, that's not it. So it's the Pdsa form that we'll be using. You'll be using the plan portion of this. There's some elements of this form that we want to be filling out, and I'll show that when we get to the assignments for today. So now in do, what must happen during do? What questions must we answer? Remember, we've done the planning. Now we're in action. What do we want to make sure that we're doing when we're in action?
We want to interview the right people involved.
Yeah, there's an element of that. So in making sure we're interviewing the right people, if we're actually engaging in something where we need to interview people, so take that to a higher level. What do we want to ask ourselves? We designed a plan. Now what do we want to make sure we're doing?
We're following it.
Yeah, are we following our plan? We did a test with a staffing and recruiting firm that added a person to their office. They had 2-person offices. We thought we could do, one person collected job openings, another person collected people to fill those openings. And this was the day before, like Indeed and things like that. So we added a 3rd person. We said, oh, we could do better work. And then at the end of the test, one of the things we noticed was we didn't actually follow our plan because, 1 person in an office left and they used that second, the 3rd person to fill in, and they only ended up with 2. So, that office said, well, the test didn't work. Well, we have to say, well, they didn't really follow the test because they didn't have a 3-person office to work with. So the question of, are we following our plan is critical because you already planned your study based on your prediction and the assumption that you actually followed your plan. What's another thing that's critical during do to make sure we're on track?
Keeping track of the data.
Yes. Are we keeping track of or collecting the data we planned to collect? And then there's one other aspect, and this is the part of the unexpected, correct? Some things happen. So what's another question we might want to ask ourselves about do?
Do we need to alter our plan in any way based off of observations?
Yeah, that's the one where that's study, because you want to follow your plan completely. You don't want to change your plan in the middle because then your predictions don't work, your assumptions don't work. That would be something. Go ahead.
What are the outliers? I mean, are we finding any outliers that we weren't expecting?
Yeah, so what are the outliers? Are we recording things, data that we had not planned to track? So there's always going to be some things that we didn't expect. And then automatically, because you're collecting data, there's going to be some study or analysis, during do. What analysis are we making now? Any other thoughts about what ought to happen during do? This is good. So in study, what must happen during study, and what are the primary questions that we have during study? We've made our plan. We've designed it, we think, well enough to test a small move. We put our team together, we made our predictions, we planned our data collection. We're doing it, we've done it, we've collected our data, we've made our observations. Now what's important that we ask ourselves in study?
Analyze the data.
Yeah. So when we analyze it, we should ask ourselves, are we analyzing the data in the way we had planned? Because sometimes you can say, oh, let's look at it a different way, because now you've got some hindsight bias. You want to justify some of the things, and that's a dangerous thing to do. So you want to stick with your analysis plan. What's another key question we should be asking ourselves?
Did it meet the goal that we wanted it to?
Did, so the goal, can we word that as, did results match our prediction? Is that it?
Yeah, yeah.
And then, Megan, you might be able to answer this one. So if we're asking, did our results match our predictions? What comes out of that? We have three options. Did our results match our predictions? We can ask ourselves, did we
learn from it?
Yeah, did we learn from it? And we might even say, I'm going to phrase this, what do we now know? So now we've studied it, we did the results match our predictions, did we learn from it? What do we now know? Those are useful questions. Let's look at the next, and here's an observation. Sometimes people, in our form, are there any unpredicted observations? Many people turn in, there's none, and that's almost never accurate. So if there are no unpredicted observations, the most likely conclusion is that you've been lax in your observations. It's unlikely, Danny, you said this, it's that you're so thorough in your predictions as to predict everything that would happen. So this is often one of the biggest gaps in our Pdsa work. So during ACT, what must happen? What are the options available? And what choices require prediction? So have we talked about what options are available during the ACT cycle of Pdsa, during the ACT portion of Pdsa?
Is it above it?
So I don't know if we have or not.
Abolish or act?
I feel like we haven't. No.
Yeah, we haven't. So we have either it worked well, we want to adopt it. So we're going to do this all the time, forever after kind of thing. Might even expand it to the entire organization. We're just going to adopt it wholesale. Or, so that's adopt. Adapt is, you know what, I might need to retest this either for a longer period of time. I think, Megan, you said you wanted to try this for a longer period of time, not just say, we're implementing this, but you wanted to see how it goes for a period of time, correct?
Correct.
Or you might say, adapt also might mean, can we try this in other departments? Will this also work over there? Because, just because it works here doesn't mean it works over there. And the other one, the third one, so we have adopt, adapt, or abandon, meaning, oh, we're never doing that again. Like that was a disaster kind of thing, So, and those things, that was going to happen. So those are your three options. Adopt, adapt, or abandon. So, and the question we have is, which of those choices require prediction? When we adopt something, are we making any kind of prediction?
If you're adopting it, you're going to make the prediction that other variables aren't going to impact the success of whatever you're adopting.
Right. Yep. That's a good one. Yeah. So in the future, we're saying all the variables will remain the same as the ones that we experienced during our test. So that's a version of a prediction. How about adapt? Does that require prediction?
Kind of means that it wasn't quite what we thought it was, so we have to make some modifications in order to make it work.
Yeah, so maybe we're predicting that we might encounter different circumstances, or we might learn some additional things as we attempt to adapt it. So maybe it's not a perfect solution, and our prediction is there's more to learn. And then what about abandon?
Well, if you abandon, you still, I'm assuming you still have a goal to correct whatever you were trying to correct in the first place. We're gonna have to go through this whole cycle again.
Yeah, so that's one, is that we have to continue learning, or that we learned what we were testing actually applied to the problem we had defined previously. So there's an element still of prediction in every one of those choices that we make. So what questions should we ask with ACT? What are some basic questions we want to apply here?
Were we successful would be the adopt, yes or no. Adapt would be, are there things that need to change?
I'm going to say, or require further testing, perhaps, right? What else? Anything else? What other questions might we ask?
I think with abandon, we have a lot more questions than the other. Like, do we have to review the data? Was our data correct? The way we collected it, does that need to be changed? What do we have to do next in order to regroup and start again?
Okay. Any other questions that you think are important for us to ask while we're doing ACT? So remember, Plan, Do, Study, Act is typically just one of a sequence of cycles that we take. We never do just one Pdsa cycle. So here's an automatic question that shows up in ACT. What is our next Pdsa cycle? Or maybe what should be? Okay. All right. And I can send you those slides if you'd like, if you still need to do some documentation on that. This is our form that I'd like you to turn in with your, you can add questions that you think of while you're completing this form. So today we have a Teach to Learn about the basics of Pdsa, the exercise form, and then, of course, the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle form itself. Let me pull that up. So here's the overview. The pages are kind of color coded like we have in our cycle. But basically right now the document has a page for Plan, Do, Study, and Act. And then the plan form, the project name is the name of whatever project you have going on. Megan, you might be some version of, what do you call it, morning stand-up or some version of that?
Morning huddle.
Morning huddle, yep, there you go. And you in the form itself, you put the Pdsa leader's name. Now, in this case, Denise and Joe, you might pick one of you. So you have who's the leader, the date that you began the PDSA cycle, and then the cycle number. So each time you run a PDSA for the same project, you just increment the numbers. So it's, use a 2-digit number. So it's either 01, 02, because you might get up to 10 cycles, which is why we put a 2-digit number in there for sorting purposes. And then we will move the following. So this is the specifics of the test. After we make this move, we will observe these results. So this is the test is what we will move. The data we'll collect is here. I've thrown this in just for fun. I'm so certain that we will observe these results. So these results that you put in the prediction, I'm willing to bet. And then you put how many dollars you're willing to bet. Now this defaults to $1 million. You're very, very confident. If you're not so confident, you want to, punch a different. So if we say prepare form, I'm going to do preview. These buttons are only one choice per, answer. So you're not stuck with $1 million. You don't have to delete that or anything, but that's just fun. And then this is one of those where in our problem definition, we think if we make this move, it'll produce an improvement because, and it'll be some version of it, addressing, getting us closer to our overall objective, or improving one of the metrics that we have for, basic questions 1 and 2. Okay. So any questions on this form?
I have a question in regards to my menu project. So the first part, I just increased the font, but kept
Yeah, I will
it
change the font size from this size to that size, and then you also say, where do I put it? Here's where I'm putting it, and then here's what I'm going to observe. How many questions residents ask about what's on their plate, or residents can answer the questions about what's on their plate or what their menu is. Some version of that.
Okay.
And also the who, because you have other people that were involved in the test, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you'd include those people, say, okay, I'm going to ask these people to participate with this and work with the residents to ask these questions. And then you say, here's the answers, here's the data we'll collect.
Okay.
And then you made a prediction that this is this will be an improvement, but then as a result, you actually learned that, the change of font size that I made didn't produce the results I expected. Correct?
Correct.
You're right. Okay. So that's the basic plan. That's the form. That's the portion that I'd like you to fill in. Today's, if you haven't scheduled office hours with me yet, please do. And then, of course, our theory of knowledge quotes that I'd like you to use to add to your mind map. Please sketch on this at least a little bit each day. This is a powerful, and this is the basis of move to improve. You cannot learn the structure of the world without moving. That's how we grew up. We learned everything by moving around, moving our head, moving our ears, tasting things, all that sort of thing. And then, of course, learning is never perfect, never complete, from Katie Anderson. Purposeful, honest self-reflection can help us make better decisions and allow us to lead ourselves and others more effectively. So consider these quotes as you update your mind map today. Any other questions before we complete? All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.